Hello everyone, welcome to yet another Learning Live at HID Academy. My name is Rob Puricelli and I'm an instructional designer within the HID Academy. Welcome along wherever you might be in the world. We understand we have a global audience, so it might be first thing in your morning, it might be lunchtime, it could be at the end of your day as it is for me over here in the UK. So welcome wherever you are, and I hope you've had a fine day and a fine week so far. We've got a great topic for you today and some really cool guests. We're going to crack straight into that as soon as I've just done the obligatory housekeeping bit at the beginning of the stream. So first of all, if you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, which is where the bulk of our viewers come from, make sure that you do give us a thumbs up if you like what you see. If you need to subscribe to either our YouTube channel or to our LinkedIn page, then please do. You'll find lots of information there and more training videos and more live streams. So please do give us a like and a subscribe. And if you know somebody within your organization or within your business that might benefit from these productions, then please do share the link with them and tell them to do exactly the same and subscribe to the channel. That would be fantastic. We do have a question and answers session towards the end of the stream, but we do encourage you to interact throughout the stream and pass on your comments and your questions. We'll queue the questions up for the end unless they're kind of really pertinent to the thing that we're talking about at that time. Then we'll bring those in. But if you could do me a big favor, because these eyes are getting old, so if you could preface your question with a big capital Q, that would be really helpful, because that then allows me to put them into the appropriate bucket, and then I can pull them from that pool and throw them on the screen, and we can ask those questions of our guests. So stick a big capital Q at the front of your question. That really does help. If you want to get in touch with us at Academy, you can do so using this email address right here, training@hidglobal.com. So if we don't answer your question, or you have something else you think of later on, or maybe you're watching us on catch up and you want to ask us a question, then please do send it to training@hidglobal.com. And if one of the Academy team can't answer it, and we're kind of manning that inbox 24/7, if one of the Academy team can't answer it, we will pass it on to someone who will be able to do that. Finally, if you haven't already, please do go and sign up for the HID Academy Learning Center, which is at this very address that you see on the screen there, hidglobal.com/training. And you can access the literally hundreds of training courses, certifications, videos, all sorts of wonderful content over there for all aspects of HID's product range and solutions and services. It's completely free of charge. And so please do go and sign up and join there. That would be fantastic. Right, that's enough from me. We haven't had this gentleman on the live stream for a little while, and it pains me. So it's really a great pleasure to welcome my longtime colleague, Mr. Paul Hynes. Paul, how are you, sir?
Hey everyone, I am doing fairly well. Like Rob said, my name is Paul Hynes. I'm a technical trainer with the HID Academy, and I focus on identity and access management solutions. Our topic today is one I'm actually really excited to learn about. I have a fairly decent background in visitor management, but I don't know a lot about the healthcare side of things. So to help me with that, we do have two people. The first one, I'll let him introduce himself, is Duane Campbell. He's a Senior Director of Product Management. I'll pass it over to Duane, and he can tell you all about who he is.
Hi. Yeah, Duane Campbell. Yeah, I'm the product guy on the call. So we were talking about HID Visitor Manager and how it works with our healthcare customers today. So I've got that product plus a few of our others here on my team, and I'm just excited to be invited to the live stream. And Duane, I think we'll pass over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I work on Don's team. I'm the senior solutions engineer, pre-sales engineer. I've been around HID for quite some time. I've been fortunate enough to be able to spend quite a bit of my time here working with a lot of healthcare facilities, helping them understand, their needs as far as visitor management and security. And this is my first one, so I am extremely excited to do this. So I look forward to this whole process.
That's great to have you all here. Welcome, everyone. Just in case, for the avoidance of doubt, Duane isn't actually sat in our lobby in Austin. That's just a very nice background. If you ever get the chance to visit, it's a lovely place. But yeah, great to see you all, and it's great to meet you guys for the first time. So welcome along, and I hope you enjoy this as much as we expect to ourselves. So Paul, I'm gonna kind of take a back seat for this one because you guys are the experts. I'll just press all the right buttons, hopefully in the right places. So over to you, Paul.
All right, I'll let you take care of the technical stuff. Just for a little bit of context, like I said, I do know a little bit about visitor management, but when you think about healthcare facilities today, I'll let maybe Duane take this one. What makes visitor management like uniquely challenging compared to other industries, and compared to visitor management for maybe enterprise?
No, that's a great question. When you think about hospitals, right, the first thing you think about is place where there's care, there's affection, it's a warm, welcome, and open place, right? So, that idea alone kind of puts a burden or a limit on the idea of implementing visitor management. But at the same time, things have evolved, and in the current day and age, we have to provide some level of accountability, security, and safety to both staff, patients, as well as visitors. And then obviously we also want to focus on that visitor experience, right? Because hospitals always want their visitors to always want to come back. If patients need care, they always have that need to be come back to that hospital.
Okay. Are there any specific risks that are associated with like not using a visitor management system? So if they're focusing on using paper logs or like disconnected systems, are there any risks that maybe organizations underestimate in those cases?
Yeah, because it's I guess the one word, if you want to sum it up, is accountability, right? You want to know who's coming in, who's visiting who, where they're going, what time they've come in. Obviously, again, if we need to, we need to know who's where and why. Having a visitor management system helps us track that, for auditing and accountability purposes, right? If we have a log, papers get lost, emails get lost, or email trails become so, that accountability could take 6 to 7 weeks as opposed to, your digital visitor management system. You have the ability to pull up those records right in front of you immediately. So
Okay.
on the spot.
That makes sense. So from kind of like a product overview point of view, who is HID Visitor Manager for healthcare really built for inside of the healthcare organization? Maybe we'll hear from Don for this one.
Sure. Yeah. So who's it really built for? Kind of a wide set of people. I mean, to start with, it's built for the visitor, obviously, sort of right in the name, and trying to make sure that's there, but also for the staff, not just like the front desk who might be using the product to check people in, but essentially for the entire staff. Like one of the main goals for your staff and visitor management is to make sure that everyone in the hospital is identified, understood, everybody who's there, and everyone can be assured that they're supposed to be there. You've got a control in place that gives you a point of checking and assuring people that they do belong and that they are allowed in the spaces. So it really goes from the visitor through the reception desk to the entire staff that's there. And actually, I guess the patients as well, right? When you're creating a method for patients to pre-register visitors or to control who's allowed to visit them, that becomes a bit of their experience with the hospital. It can make it easier for them. It can make them feel more comfortable about, being a patient in the hospital as well.
Okay. How does the healthcare version of HID Visitor Manager differ from like the generic visitor management tools? And it can be either Duane or Don. I think maybe Duane.
I
We'll
could
go
take that
back and
one.
forth a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What the real key point, I guess, in that is that we're we're capturing information about the patient. So when these visitors come in to the facility, they're directed where they need to go, what floors they need to get to, right? And we validate that visitor is there for that patient. That's probably the most impactful piece of the healthcare visitor management system. I mean, obviously, visitor management, you're a visitor, you're coming in to see a host or a sponsor or a person, but that key component where we are syncing that visitor to the patient is where it really comes into play, right? Because now we could provide them with directions, wayfinding, they know where they're going, and we can also vet them to make sure that, hey, this patient is not in this system, they're not active, they've been discharged. And then obviously we can give the directions to that visitor where they need to go to address that issue. So that's probably the key factor, is that syncing or the linking between the patient and the visitor, and being able to provide that information as they proceed with their visit.
I do like that you mentioned that. I have been in the position where, I've gone to visit someone in the hospital, and it's confusing even figuring out where to go in the hospital to
Yeah,
visit them.
for sure. Yeah.
That's definitely a big plus.
I've been
what
lost
would
in
a-
more than one hospital
Oh,
myself.
absolutely. I was just
Yeah.
going to say the same thing, Don. I've been lost
Yeah.
in many a hospital.
Yeah, I've been lost. Going for a simple checkup. So even
Yeah.
trying to find something any deeper than that is difficult. What would a good visitor management experience look like in a hospital setting?
I think to start, you want to look for something that's simple, easy for the visitors to understand. Fast is pretty important. They're not there to register as a visitor, to go through some process. They're there to see somebody. They're there for care of some sort, potentially. Even if they're not there as a patient or visiting a patient, if they're a vendor or anyone else, contractor, anyone else who's coming in, and they're being gated through the visitor system as well. Like, their goal isn't to stand and go through a registration. So it should be pretty obvious. It should be pretty simple. And yet at the same time, making sure you're getting the information you need, and sharing back with them sort of a badge or something else that lets them, lets the world know that they're there and they're part of that, part of the group that's allowed in the facility at that time. And it really goes beyond like the visitor system itself too. Like, one of the things we'll do is we'll look at like the entire environment, what else is out there. Everything from, how is the lobby set up? Is it obvious what they should do, where they should go? Do they know there is a visitor system that they should be interacting with someone? Is where they get in line, if there's a line, or that the furniture and the layout actually directs them right to the right place, so that they just sort of naturally flow to where they should be. So it's not even just about sort of visitor management software. It's about how it fits in your environment and fits with your people and your workflow as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Duane, can you maybe walk us through maybe a little more granular what it looks like for a visitor, or what it could look like, I guess, for a visitor coming in, from the moment that they arrive to the moment that they leave the hospital, visiting someone?
Yeah. I mean, I'll do my best to try and narrate that story without getting too granular with it. But
Yeah.
essentially, when you come to the hospital, typically you'll have a check-in desk, or you'll have some sort of healthcare or a volunteer or a security guard sitting at a desk with typically some devices, a laptop, a printer, a camera, and it begins there, right? That person walks in and they have they have intentions of seeing someone, whether it be in a bad situation or a great situation. Their intentions are to go and see someone. So that process is going to begin with, who are you here to see, right? And that check-in, healthcare check-in person is going to look up that person. And once they identify that piece of information, now we can start the linking process of that visitor to that patient. Right. And then there could be some security restrictions. Maybe a passcode is needed, or we need to vet the person before we can start that initial visitor management and capturing their information process. But essentially, if all those things align, that security guard is now capturing first name, last name, and some other details about that visitor. And then, we go through that process. Our software does some things in the background after we've captured that information. It does some vetting, right? Internally or even externally, we vet that person to make sure that they're not on any type of do not permit list or a BOLO list or a watch list. Once that is vetted, then the simple process is essentially just printing out a sticky badge and giving it to that person. Or if it's a dad going to see mom, we're printing out an access card credential, but maybe the dad is going to visit mom in a NICU, which is typically a secure area, right? But that whole process shouldn't take any longer than maybe a 45 second window. to capture that information.
I was going to say 45 minutes sounds more like my average visit to a hospital trying to visit someone, but yeah.
Yeah, without VM, possibly 45 minutes. With VM, definitely less than 45 minutes.
All right, excellent. Are there any parts of the process that are particularly important, less so for the visitors, but more so for the staff, either for security or for peace of mind, making sure that they're not doing the wrong thing?
Uh, I mean, that question can go in so many different directions, right? Like, are there things that are important for staff? I mean, when you talk about visitor management, we talk about issuing sticky badges, and then, there's always questions and things around, well, can those badges self-expire? That brings you to identifying if that sticky badge is valid. That's one. Two, if it's not valid, then that person doesn't belong on this floor at this hours or maybe at this date, right? So, noticing those kind of things and addressing them or having policies and procedures that will help your staff address those issues. Now, I'm not saying the nurse needs to go up to someone with expired badge and tell them to get off the floor, but then there's things that they need to know, so address and let security know, and then let security handle those kind of challenges and issues.
Okay,
Does
that
that
makes
make
sense.
sense? Okay.
Yeah, Don, do you have anything to add? Any tips or tricks for this process?
Yeah, there's sort of two things I always like to do. One is that start by looking at the whole process, looking at everything, like the pieces that Duane was just talking about. Like, what is your policy? What policy changes are you going to have to do as part of implementing the system or updating the visitor system that you have? And make sure that you're talking to all the different departments, not just talking to maybe front desk staff in that process. Talk to nursing, talk to departments looking for what issues do they have today, and get the big picture to start. But then phase it out and solve small problems at a time. I've seen some hospitals start with the simple problem of let's get a badge on everybody. And that seems pretty straightforward, but then they're trying to figure out what circumstances do people bypass the front desk, usually say there aren't any. And then turns out that there are quite a few where things like that will happen. So how do we get through that and do that really well as you work your way through all of these different steps and sort of different goals that you have, and then make regular progress along that. Bring in another phase pretty rapidly behind the first phase, so that you've got a lot, you've got momentum and you start to build momentum through the project. We've also seen places where they want to do one full comprehensive thing, and that can work as well, but it tends to take a lot more work and a lot more training, a lot more coordination to get through the big project launch kind of thing. Where I see the staffs that take that phased approach usually have an easier time of it.
Okay. There's a couple parts of that process that I think I really want to highlight a little bit. One is the registration section. I know in visitor management systems, a lot of times there's opportunities for pre-registering or front loading that information before someone even arrives at the location. I guess one is that something that we have with the visitor manager for healthcare, and how does that change that front desk workload? Does it progress from 45 seconds down to 30 seconds or?
Yeah, pre-registration always helps. So if you can figure out, for instance, one of the easiest ways is to you integrate with like HL7 or the fire protocol, and have it preload inpatients and outpatients, so that you've got a list of people who are in the system. You don't have to maintain that. Do that through the integration of that system. That may not be day one something you want to do, but it's definitely something that should be on the list. And then automatically, all the inpatients and outpatients who are arriving are registered. You see them. You can just move straight to check-in. And then people who are arriving either with those folks or are coming to visit somebody who's already been been checked in as an inpatient. You've saved a couple of steps. You're ahead of the game when they show up at the desk. So I think that's a key one that really helps with that. And it really does, because you're not typing as much. You're finding things in the system, especially we see in children's hospitals. They'll screen visitors, and they'll run them through a quick background check system. Is pretty common. If you're going to do that at a children's hospital and they're not pre-registered, it takes a few seconds for that to come back. Where if they're already preloaded, great. That piece has been done, and when they show up, you're just moving straight to, you know, check them in, print the badge, get them going again. It also really helps too to have things like for VIP visitors or special case visitors where they may want to um, restrict the list of who can visit them and have other types of controls like that in place. Also, really helpful that they can do that ahead of time. It's not every visitor who needs that type of add somebody to the list or pre-register like visitors to the patient. But again, it's another piece that can make things easier for the people who need it or feel the need for something like that. And again, smooths everything at the front desk because the instructions are really clear. The system is going to enforce the rules that the patients have asked, to be put in place.
I've got
That
two.
that does kind of bring me into the next topic. But
Hey,
before we get
Paul.
there, yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead, Duane.
before you continue, I just have 2 cents on what Don, I just wanted to add on to what Don
Absolutely.
said.
Yeah, tell us
So
how
there's
Don's wrong.
no, he's not wrong at all. But to add on
I'm usually
to
wrong.
no, to the add on to the right things that Don was saying is I think sometimes in healthcare we tend to in visitor management sometimes they tend to forget about vendors. Right. My sister was a pharmaceutical rep for years, and she'd always talk about how she was going to this hospital and that hospital. She worked in New York, so she covered Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and she was always going into a different hospital. Walking in, seeing doctors, and I think that is something that is evolved over time, where you don't have these reps walking in anymore. So your pre-registering is probably where the beneficial factor comes into play, is that someone on behalf of the doctor can pre-register these vendors to come in, and they already have their QR codes. If they have the kiosk, they could check in at the QR code. They can sign an NDA. They can capture a picture. They can print their sticky badge. So if they're not going to see a visitor, they may not go to that visitor line. But if they're a contractor and there's a kiosk or a vendor, their check-in process is extremely smooth. So it does reduce that 45 seconds down to 25, 30 seconds, right? If they have if they're equipped with the right QR codes and things like that. So just a little 2 cents onto what Don was saying.
Okay, yeah, no, that's excellent. One of the things, and Don did mention a little bit, like different types of visitors, family members, and you mentioning, vendors coming in. Typically, anytime I've always seen in my career, anytime that you increase security, you kind of reduce like convenience or flexibility.
Yeah.
How does this visitor type approach, support both safety as well as the flexibility for people entering the hospital?
Ooh, that's such a fine line. That is a very fine line. I man, I mean, I literally could speak from experience. I've been fortunate enough to been on site when there's go lives with a brand new visitor management system, and I say it's 50-50. I mean, it does provide a great level of security, convenience. At the same time, this is all brand new. And to
Yeah.
mostly visitors to them, it's all brand new. So, yesterday I didn't have to give you my ID, and now I have to give you my ID, right? And I think the message, there's some things I think we'll talk about later on that kind of help convey implementing a visitor management system, right? But I think the message coming from whoever it comes from is that the purpose of this system is to provide safety and security for not just you but your loved ones, along with the staff that we have within this facility.
Yeah, and I think that's a good message that it is safer for your loved ones as well.
Yeah.
Don, did you have anything to add? Maybe
Yeah,
maybe some
getting the
examples.
message of
Yeah.
why out there is really important for that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just we're putting a system in place. We're putting a system in place so that we all have a good sense of who's in the hospital, who's allowed to be here, and that we know that our loved ones, our parents, our children are safe. So it's something that you've got to get the right message around. But yeah, once you do, it does make sense to people. And I think, Duane's point is on the money. You don't just want to turn a system like this on. Make sure the patients who are coming today know that the change is coming tomorrow, right? They should have signs about the fact that the visitor management system is being implemented, or a new system is being implemented on Thursday, and not just walk in on Thursday and discover everything's different. Give them a heads up. There's lots of returning visitors as well.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. So just to change gears a little bit, I think earlier on in the process, Duane had mentioned kind of real-time visitor tracking or reporting. So is that like real-time visibility of where visitors are in the building? So in case of emergency preparedness or things like that, is that something you could expand on a little bit? Either Duane or Don.
I could take that, sure. Yeah, so there's obviously, near real time. Let's call it near real time, right? Because if we're using access control and we're providing access control to visitors, then we know where they are, what doors they've gone into, what areas they've been to. Outside of the access control, we know where they're supposed to be, right? And we know that very quickly, navigating the software either through checking out your visits and looking at where that patient is and where the visitor is visiting, excuse me, or running a report and you're finding out where Duane Foote is supposed to be visiting Delroy Foote, in third floor of the whatever building it may be. So yeah, it's near real time tracking, and again, where they're supposed to be. Again, hospitals are large and there are a lot of areas. If we're providing access, we know where they are. Looking at their access control logs, we could see what doors they've gone into.
And even if we're not, we're aware of who's in the building.
Correct.
Yep.
So I think that also gives you the ability to, I think one of the biggest ones is, if there is an emergency, know who's in the building, be able to message them.
Notify,
Really one of the things that happens pretty commonly now is they'll capture mobile phones for everyone who's coming through. And so if there is a need to share some emergency update that something's happening, it could be weather related or health and safety related, whatever it is, having that information captured just makes that whole process much easier.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Something that you touched on earlier was integration with HL7, and I think you said Fire. I'm not familiar with Fire. I'm familiar with HL7. Why is that integration so important, especially for like complex hospital environments?
I always call it HL7 because it was HL7 when I started. It was FHIR, and some people love to pronounce it Fire, even though I'm sure that's can't
probably
possibly
not.
be right.
Probably not the. It's probably an acronym for something else.
Yeah, I don't know, but at least a few people love pronouncing that one. But yeah, I think it. So the two reasons I think it's important. One is that speed of entry. When you get to that point and you do that integration, having the records, having everybody in the system, and keeping that up to date is really speeds entry. It's also a better experience for the people who are coming in. If somebody's changed rooms, they've been moved to a different location in the hospital, they don't come and check in and be sent to the old location or sent generically. And so even if they haven't been told yet that they're that somebody moved into a different part of the hospital, they can be told where to go at the front desk. And so getting that sort of live connection is pretty important for that. So yeah, probably those two pieces, just better experience and faster, which is, faster is a better experience too, I guess.
Yeah. I see that Rob was in the background with the fast Google skills there. It's fast healthcare interoperability resources.
Well, that was me.
Oh, was that you?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Nicely done.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe moving on a little bit to more like specific use cases. What use cases tend to maybe surprise healthcare organizations the most? when it comes to visitor management? Maybe we'll switch over to Duane.
Yeah, I think I mentioned one before about vendors and contractors, right? And reoccurring visits as an example, right? I said my sister was a pharmaceutical rep. She typically is going to go to a hospital, maybe the same hospital, once a month for the next 6 months, right? So, speed of process, trying to get her in, checked in quickly or quicker, pre-registering her for reoccurring visits. That would be a real-time use case of being able to streamline that check-in process and getting Stacy out of the lines that are for the patients and the visitors, and getting her, maybe over to the kiosk where she can check in and go and visit the doctor, or whoever she needs to visit within that facility. Um, let's think. What are some other use cases? Another use case is, I think you had brought it up, um, with emergency scenarios. Don, you had talked about, sending out information. We have a built-in, notification system for, again, emergencies that can be triggered, provided we have the proper mobile capabilities within the system. We have the ability to, provide emergency notifications within the system.
Okay, so like if there is an emergency, it's not like, oh, I'm going to start texting everyone who's in the building. It's just the system sends out a notification to everyone
Yeah, the
who's
system can
first.
do a mass notification, and again, that's a time-sensitive situation, right? Depending on the emergencies, most of the time, those emergencies are time-sensitive, right? So we need to get a message out to these people as soon as possible, and that's where the VMS has that capability of doing that.
Okay. Are there any like maybe creative solutions or tips and tricks that you guys have seen hospitals come up with that help build a more successful visitor solution?
Oh yeah. One of my favorites. I actually saw on my way in from the parking lot in to visit a hospital, and there's a new dad walking in, and his visitor badge said, it was his giant visitor badge that said, "I'm visiting my new child in the XYZ," and um, found out later that the hospital actually gave them a choice of two styles of badges. One was kind of a plain, normal looking badge. The other one was this giant, kind of celebratory badge. The same color. You could tell from, a distance that which part of the hospital they were supposed to be in, and the staff understood what they were for. And, the folks who were just wanted to celebrate the day and get to shake every hand in the parking lot, opted for the big one. And this guy did not leave a hand unshook as he went through there. And I just thought that was kind of a way to make the visitor system kind of special. And that kind of creativity or thought process of what might add, a little bit more joy to the parent in that. And I think also the fact that they had thought, let's have two styles. Like, not everybody's going to, wants to, not everybody's an extrovert. Not everybody wants the same thing. Not everybody's in the same situation. And so I thought it, was pretty impressed with that whole idea of the announcement kind of visitor badge. And then the fact that they even thought through it enough to give people a choice of a different style as well. That's probably the most creative thing I've seen in a while. Certainly made that
That's
experience
pretty
better
cool.
for that
Yeah,
parking lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
parking lot and the dad for sure.
Yeah,
I
yeah. Well, he
like
was
that in
making the
theory.
experience better for the rest of us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I've
like
got
that in
one.
theory, but that's my nightmare is having everyone come up to me to shake my hand. So
It's why I thought it was so awesome they had the
yeah,
second choice, because there's a bunch of people who are like, why are people always trying to touch me?
yeah.
You know, I
Um,
I've got one. I think
oh
one of
yeah, good.
the
Go for it.
most you know one of the most creative solutions I saw. I thought this was absolutely great. Is before the facility that I'm referring to has like a bulletin that they put out weekly throughout the hospital, and you probably get some sort of email about it. But what they did was they actually notified. They put the notification of a visit management system they're going to be implementing in that notification. That was one. Two, they actually had signage all over the hospital in all their main entrances that we have this new system that's being implemented and why they were doing it and so forth. One or two bullets of why they were doing it. And I thought that was a great idea because those people who are reoccurring, it kind of gave them an idea of what's coming down the pipe. We're not just taking your ID and we're going to run with it and so forth, but we're doing this because of these reasons, and we're letting you know. I thought that was probably one of the best ideas that any facility could have done when they're implementing a visit management system is provide an update or signage as to what we're doing. I always recommend that when we talk about, we're talking to hospitals and we're talking to partners. I think that's a really great ideas to enforce that.
Is there any specific feedback that hospitals have given after deployment that that you want to highlight, or?
Let me think. Let me think of all the different things people have said. I mean, yes. I mean, most of the time it's we're happy with the system. We like what it does. They want it to do more, right? Because it's almost like they want to do a one-stop shop. And what I mean by that is, facilities without a visitor management system, they're in 3 or 4 different systems trying to get visitors to patients, and they want one point to go look at. And I think that's where the visitor management comes into play. And as we evolve, we add more functions and features and benefits to the visitor management system, so where these check-in staff can focus on one system and getting the person checked in and capturing all the information that they need in that one system.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. I remember when my son was born, I was in the hallways of the hospital at like 3 a.m. because he wouldn't sleep. Letting my partner sleep, and I was I had the wristband was
Yep.
the only identification that I had at the time, right? So I probably got stopped 100 times walking back and forth down this hallway with people making sure I wasn't stealing a baby.
Yep.
So I mean, even something like that, even just having that convenience of a system that people understand, that there's signage up, that people are aware of, and there's been training on, that kind of lets them.
Oh yeah, it's really important. Yeah, it's such a small piece that carries such huge weight.
Yeah, for sure. As far as from like an implementation and adoption, viewpoint, I think anytime that if you're approaching a hospital who doesn't have, say, a visitor management system, they're immediately going to kind of think, oh, this is going to be complex. Are there any tips or implementation tips, that you kind of lead with or could bring to a hospital to kind of say, we're going to reduce the perceived complexity of this to people who are maybe not aware of how visitor management systems work?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Yeah, you can shake that one down.
Yeah, we have on-prem and cloud systems. I always recommend a cloud system unless you have a strong reason for on-prem. It's going to be faster for you to scale. It's easier for you as you move from site to site and location to location to just continue to grow that, and it's more flexible. I definitely always recommend the phased approach as well. Like, people do want more, add more every other week, just keep it growing. And maybe you're expanding to another site, maybe you're adding some new functions and adding more to that. You're giving some extra training. Now we're going to add a little bit of additional steps, or open up for some of the pre-registration, or open up for special considerations like VIP visitor, VIP patients, so that you want to treat them differently and things like that. You don't need, while a lot of people want it all at once and want to do everything on day one, it's often easier on staff if you go through and phase that and make rapid progress, but give people a chance to adjust to one phase before you move to the next.
And is there any kind of like specific advice for teams that, who are preparing for deployment, around like training or anything along those lines?
I mean, definitely get training.
Yeah. Training is probably number one.
This is just me trying to pump, hey, go to HIDacademy.com/training.
Yeah, training for sure is probably number one. I'm talking about everybody, not just the check-in staff, but clinical staff, security, anyone who is going to come in contact with this, which is majority of the staff at hospitals. Training, I think, is important. Messaging is important to staff and personnel. And I think signage and awareness is probably number 2 and 2A, 2B, if you will. Again, we talked about signage, letting everyone know what we're doing and why we're doing it so that they can be aware of what's going on in our hospital, right? Our main purpose is to provide safety and security for staff, patients, as well as visitors within this facility. At least that's what I think they should prepare for once it's deployed.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's
Yeah.
a big one I've seen it. I was touring several hospitals in the same system, um, uh, late last year, and I saw it between two different sites. They had two different hospitals, very different setup and behavior from a lobby standpoint. And one of them had this big atrium lobby that had entrances in multiple places and a big information desk in the center. Actually, a really obvious, huge information desk. And a few people would walk up to that, but plenty of other people just either walked in and ignored it or walked
Yep.
in and just immediately turned and went to a different direction. And if you, as I was standing near one of the other entrances, I realized this huge desk that is so obvious coming in the way I'd come in is pretty far away when you come in from the other. And
Mhm.
there's three or four other distractions right there that kind of pull you in that direction that unless they're paying attention, they may not realize that's even where they're supposed to go. And so they weren't getting a lot of people checking in. It wasn't something that was common or part of the thought process. The other lobby didn't have nearly as obvious this registration desk, but they had carpets and like kind of the rope line that led you right up there. It was an obvious place to go and line up right from the place you came in, to see where to go and where to head to that desk. And even with no one at the desk, people coming in that door either went straight into that line or stopped and stood aside to make like a phone call and to wait for somebody. And
Yeah.
there was almost no wandering around or no sort of cross traffic in that second lobby. And so it's think beyond just the system. You really want to think the layout, the entire message that you're giving to someone who's coming in for the first time. If they've never been there before, what do they see? And that's a hard one to answer as somebody on staff. You've been coming and going for quite a while by then, and so it's one to sort of stop and take a fresh look at, does the whole layout tell people where to go first? And I think that's one that can make a huge difference for people as they implement systems like this.
Yeah, I like that kind of approach where I mean, there is a software and there is a system that's going to get installed and it's going to take care of all this stuff, but there's all this other outlying stuff, right? Where that you have to think about to really make it easy for people, to make it approachable, to make it something that people are going to see the value of and use to its fullest potential, I guess you could say. We're coming up on our 45-minute mark here, which is normally when we start the Q&A. So I may turn it over to Rob and just see. I'm horrible. I haven't been paying attention to the chat. I've just been paying attention to you guys. So Rob might have some questions that have popped up in chat that maybe he can throw at you and see how you handle it.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. It's been really interesting listening to this because I really didn't know that much. I knew about visitor management, but how it applies itself to the healthcare system. I mean, over here in the UK, we have quite a different kind of system here, but there's a lot of parallels there. So really interesting. But we do have a couple of questions. So if you just bear with me a moment, I will bring them up on screen. This one was actually a really good one. What is one mistake that healthcare organisations should avoid with visitor management? What's kind of the things that you've seen, noticed?
Um, if I was to sum it up, I think what Don touched on it is trying to do too much all at once. And what I mean by that is, again, most healthcare facilities have multiple buildings, multiple locations, large campus with a lot going on. And to try to throw this in across that entire campus, um, almost sets yourself up for failure. It's a very difficult thing. I think the phrase Don used was phases, right? We want a phased approach right, to how we deploy this visitor management system, right? We want to start with inpatient, kind of get everyone acclimated. Everyone, I mean, staff, check-in people, as well as visitors, right? Let them understand what's going on, and then we can branch off into other locations and other phases, right? We may start doing things at outpatient facilities, right? Which is slightly different workflow, but essentially it's the same endpoint. We're checking them in, and they're visitors for an appointment for that specific day. But again, a phased approach, I think, is probably the best way to avoid any mistakes on the deployment, or one of the mistakes on the deployment.
Anything to add to that, Don?
No, I was going to go to the exact same place. It's don't make it overly complicated from the start, and I to me the other mistake is thinking ahead of time that we have all the answers. Like facilities are different, cities are different, where you are in the city is different, and so there's often not just one approach that's right. And so to me, it's the mistake, I guess, is not listening to the staff or not being fully aware of how things will work at your location. And probably the best way to solve that is treat everything as a learning experience, not just because this is a training channel, but because that gives you a solid approach. You try something, you see how it works, see how people react to it. Maybe then we can fix it by doing better training. Maybe we can fix it with better signage, or maybe what we're trying to do is the wrong thing for this location. And so always be willing to take feedback and adjust as you go as well.
Yeah. No, another question coming from Sarah that kind of... Sorry, Duane, did you want to add
I just wanted to add to Don's point, because it kind of just slides right into it, is that I think a lot of facilities need to be prepared to discuss policies and workflows that may slightly change, especially if you're coming from either a pre-existing visitor management system or nothing, and you have people are used to a certain thing or used to a certain way. Some of these things may slightly change, and now you have to now discuss and implement different policies and procedures that will help you get this visitor management system off the ground. That was my 2 cents.
Yeah, cool. This question from Sarah coming in from LinkedIn. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for stopping by and watching. What types of risks do hospitals face when they rely on manual or inconsistent visitor check-in processes instead of a centralized system like HID Visitor Manager?
I mean, I've seen it lead to violence against the staff at a hospital, not being able to track who's in the hospital. Not being able to block someone who's a known bad actor becomes risky, and it's something where I think we've seen hospitals take a tougher and tougher stance on. Like, they do need to have something in place. They do need to have a control that can block known problems from their facilities. And we saw this first years ago in children's hospitals. Took security to a much higher level, but now we're just seeing it across the board these days. And it really is about risk to patients, risk to staff.
Yeah, I would really want to embellish. I want to go a little further on that one, Don. That last point, you literally hit it on the head, right? I'll say, a few words. Workplace violence, right? That's probably the biggest thing. That's the biggest risk that you take, right? Example, current statistics, over 80% of nurses have experienced some level of workplace violence, right? So I think a visitor management system, I know a visitor management system will reduce that number drastically, right? Because now we're vetting who we're bringing in. If you think about it, we're capturing IDs, right? Most people are going to think twice about getting out of line or misbehaving when they know we have their information on file. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Thanks for that question, Sarah. Really appreciate that. One coming in on YouTube from another Duane. Is there any limitation to existing hardware, for example, Dymo printers or Fargo plastic cards? How does are there any limitations with how we're producing these badges and credentials?
So So that's a really specific question, right? More relevant to the hardware. I mean, look, we evolve and we introduce new printers. We try to stay up to date on the current printers that are out there, right? And if there's times where if there's enough call for it, Don and his team will, move forward and proceed with implementing a newer printer. We've done that with, I believe it was the Epson. I was actually the one that brought that printer to
Yep.
light, and we took some time, and then we vetted it and we implemented it, right? So, are there any restrictions? I mean, we don't support devices that are end of life. You brought up the Dymo. I know for a fact the Dymo 450, as I sit and look at the one on my desk, it is it's end of life, right? But we do support the Dymo 550. We do support the newer Epson. We do support the QL Brother 820. And then if there's enough demand for it, we could support the Zebra 420, which is a really great sticky badge printer. And then some other ones that are out in the market today that we support or we can support if
Yeah.
needed. So,
So I
it's
guess what I would, if I could jump in there, Duane,
yeah,
is
for sure, Don.
one of the mistakes I've seen people make is trying to reuse the existing equipment that's 4 or 5 years old
Yeah.
and making that one of the requirements. We actually had a hospital do that. We went through the extra steps to support some of this legacy equipment, at which point they decided that having, I think in their case it was 6, 7 year old printers in their brand new hospital wing just didn't feel right. And so then they replaced it all. And that's probably something you want to think about and put in the budget right away. Um, the saving a few dollars on trying to reuse old equipment versus getting something new that's already supported and is reliable, I really recommend looking at what is supported and moving into something new. They actually probably saved themselves a lot of issues of old devices starting to fail and not being able to get replacements very easily. So
Yeah.
I'm glad they made the pivot as they got closer to the ribbon cutting and opening the new facility.
Cool.
Well, you're not going to put old tires on a new car, are you? So,
Well,
Some
quite.
people, yeah, yeah.
Very quickly, I've got one more question I want to squeeze in because I think this is actually quite a good one. This is from Evan over on LinkedIn. Thanks for your question, Evan. What would the migration process look like for an existing Easy Lobby end user transitioning to HID Visitor Manager?
do you want to take that, Don, or you want me?
Yeah. So I think we look at two things there. We one look at what is the process that they have as they're using Easy Lobby today. And as they're looking at HID Visitor Manager, it opens up some new possibilities and new ways of working that didn't exist in the Easy Lobby product. And so we don't just want to try to replicate what they're doing, but look for chances to both simplify some of the process and then maybe even introduce some of the new processes as we go. Again, I always recommend doing that in a phased approach. So don't jump in and try to use every new feature right away until your staff gets used to it. They will be transitioning from an existing product to a new product, and that's always a learning curve. It's always something where for the first day or two they feel a little uncomfortable. So give them a chance to get used to the basics, and back that with some training, and that usually is pretty smooth.
Cool. Excellent. Well, we are really running close to time here. So, Paul, did you have anything else you wanted to add before I wrap things up? And you're muted, by the way. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I was muted because my cat was yowling. Just two quick things. One, obviously, Rob mentioned it, but everyone, if you haven't already, you should head over to hidglobal.com/training. You can sign up for our learning portal where we have a ton of great learning. We have learning on HID Visitor Manager. We have learning on Easy Lobby, which was just mentioned. We have learning videos on printers. We have modules, all kinds of stuff. There's no cost to sign up. All of that training is there, and you'll get notifications when we do more of these live streams. So it's a great place to go. And then I guess the last thing is just really quickly, because we are running on to time. If you could leave the audience, maybe I'll give this to each of you, but if you could leave the audience with just one takeaway, what would it be? Maybe we'll start, Duane.
Well, that one stuck me. I had it yesterday, and then I kind of, what would I leave them with? One takeaway.
I could
Um,
jump in then while you're
oh,
thinking.
yeah, go ahead, Don, so I can
Yeah,
mull over what I thought I was going to say.
my my big one is involve a lot of people, bring in the staff, bring in the departments, walk around to the different areas, and just because they're not directly at the front line of checking in visitors doesn't mean that they're not impacted by it. So pull the whole team together, ask opinions, figure out what works with the existing system, what they wish they could change with the existing system. You may not be able to accomplish everything they're asking for, but it gives you a really good idea of what the primary values are and what the goals are. And the more we pull in a wider group of people, the more support we get for it, the more the easier it is when it rolls out because they feel like they were part of the process. And so that's my biggest thing is pull in the whole group, get everybody involved, and make it a big team effort, and use that learning to set things in the right direction.
And I remember, James helped me remember. So I
Excellent.
guess
Thanks, James.
my last, I guess, word of advice or takeaway is, the whole idea behind this, right, is to reduce, obviously, is to make sure that we're providing a safe and secure environment for patients and visitors, right? But we also want to, in my head, and for the last couple of years, I've really focused on this, is trying to reduce workplace violence, right? It's something that you don't see too much. You don't see it on the news, or you don't see it in the newspapers. You don't see it broadcasted. But healthcare is become one of the most violent facilities or violent places to work, right? And try to reduce that. I think visitor management can help reduce those type of incidents when they occur. And if I was to leave with a takeaway, that would be my takeaway. So let's try to reduce workplace violence and work towards a better place for all our healthcare staff and patients and visitors.
I think it's a very pertinent point to finish on there, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been really cool to hear your thoughts on this. Paul, as ever, thank you so much for facilitating and running the show for us. And to Don and Duane, I hope we can get you back on here at some other point in the future to look into further topics within visitor management. So thank you guys, and have a great rest of your day. Just to let everyone know, just to remind you all that if you can, just give us a like and a subscribe. That way, you, as Paul said, you'll get notified of upcoming other live sessions, as well as all of our other video content on YouTube and of course on LinkedIn as well. And say, don't forget to go and sign up if you haven't already over at hidglobal.com/training to access the Academy Learning Center. If we didn't get to your question today, or you have a question that you thought of afterwards, then you can email us at training@hidglobal.com, and if we can't answer it, we'll be sure to forward it on to someone else who can. And that pretty much wraps it up for today. We'll be back next month on April 15th, I believe. But the best way to get reminders of that is to subscribe or join the Learning Center. I believe we're going to have something based around Mercury panels and packs and mobile access and all that kind of cool stuff. We'll be joined again by Phil Coppola and some other people as well, some new faces. So do make sure you come and join us then. Gentlemen, once again, thank you very much indeed. Have a great rest of the day. And thanks to everyone that's watching. Take care. And it's goodbye from us.
Take care.